This is the Bahamas Tonight, the Northern Edition. Good evening, all. I'm Shashina Roll. As always, it is so great to have you with us. Topping news, a local activist taking on a mega corporate giant, accusing the company of taking advantage of consumers here on Grand Bahama. Human rights advocate Joseph Darville says an investigation should be carried out in the best interest of struggling consumers. Times are tough, and Vice President of the Grand Bahama Human Rights Association, Joe Darville, says filling up your car with gas is a necessity. But he says gas prices seem to only climb on the island of Grand Bahama. He's crying shame at Freeport Oil Company Limited, or Focal, and here's why.
Gas prices in Grand Bahama are 50 cents more expensive than in Nassau. Now, Focal actually owns one of the companies in Nassau, which is selling gas 50 cents cheaper than the Focal companies here on Grand Bahama. This is totally unfair.
He says it is about time Focal justifies to Grand Bahamians why their gas prices are even higher than those in the nation's capital.
I've been following this very closely over the last year or so. Every time the gas goes up price-wise in the U.S., Focal has been able to up their price the next day. When gas goes down, and gas has been going down in the US now for the last 2.5 to 3 months, Focal has yet to bring the prices down comparable to the price of fuel.
The local activist says a few months ago a barrel of oil was $137, and today he says it is somewhere around $77. So why isn't this price reflected at the pump?
They are the wholesalers and they are the retailers.
And the importers.
And the importers. So what are you saying? And also they have tax-free exemption. So actually gas should be sold on Grand Bahama even much lesser than Nassau. So if Nassau can sell it for $4.80 some cents right now, Focal could be selling it for $4.50 a gallon. Focal, do your job. Get the prices down comparable to what is happening. And don't wait until the gas prices in the U.S. start climbing again, and then you have the excuse to say gas prices are going up, and therefore we have to up our prices.
Well, we made several attempts to contact an executive of Focal, but he was not available for comment. In other news, a 52-year-old Cedric Wilson of Arden Forest charged before the court in New Providence today on 2 counts of possession of dangerous drugs with the intent to supply. The charges are related to that major drug haul at a house in Arden Forest on Sunday, where police say they discovered over 100 crocus sacks of marijuana and 1 suitcase of hash oil. Initially, 3 persons were arrested, but Wilson was the only person charged in court today. Wilson appeared before Magistrate Joyanne Ferguson Pratt. He pled not guilty and was remanded behind bars until March 17th for trial. Switching gears now, a state funeral has been announced for former MP for West End and Bimini and former minister responsible for Out Island Affairs, Warren J. Lavarity. Lavarity passed away on November 9th at the age of 82. Tonight, Free National Movement officials are remembering the fallen freedom fighter. John Davis Roll has the story.
During a press conference held at the Free National Movement headquarters Friday morning, veterans within the ranks of the F&M paid tribute to a man described as the founding father of that party.
The Free National Movement Grand Bahama Council expresses its sadness over the death of former cabinet minister and Grand Bahama Member of Parliament and Senator, the late Sir Warren J. Lavarity, who died Sunday after a lengthy illness at the age of 82.
Former F&M parliamentarians and ambassadors C.A. Smith and Maurice Moore reflected on Warren Lavarity's legacy and his impact on national politics and Grand Bahama.
Mr. Lavarity was in the forefront of the struggle for majority rule, particularly here in his homeland of Grand Bahama. Warren Lavarity contested the elections of 1960 and was successful in winning an election in 1960. He was also successful in winning the elections of 1962 and was also successful when the Progressive Liberal Party won the government in 1967.
We were confronted here in Grand Bahama with the forces of economic change which came about under the Hawkesbury Creek Agreement, and where no provisions were made for Bahamians to really be a part of that economic development. And Warren, along with CA and myself and David, played a major role with the unions in order to bring about and to bring to the attention of not only the Bahamas but indeed the world.
F&M officials recall how a major thoroughfare leading in and out of West Grand Bahama was named in honor of Warren Lavarty.
When you're going from Freeport into 8 Mile Rock, you have to drive on the Warren Lavarty Highway. When you go to court to seek justice, you have to go to the Garnet Lavarty Justice Center.
A state funeral for the late Warren Lavarty is set for Thursday, November 20th in the nation's capital. Joan Davis Roll, ZNS Network News.
Now, former Prime Minister Hubert Ingram paying tribute to the late Warren Lavarty, calling Lavarty a Bahamian patriot and one who has selflessly dedicated his life to making life better for others despite the obstacles or personal cost. Ingram says, as Minister for Out Island Affairs, Lavarty was responsible for initiating some of the more important infrastructural developments ever undertaken in the Family Islands, noting that on Lavarty's watch, the highway connecting 8 Mile Rock and West End was built. The former Prime Minister says no other road built in any other family island has ever been built to that quality and standard, and that the length of the seawall constructed in West Grand Bahama has yet to be exceeded anywhere in the Bahamas. Ingram says his administration was pleased to name the highway leading into 8 Mile Rock in his honor, and in 2010, Lavarty was recognized by Her Majesty the Queen and made a Commander of the Order of St. Michael and St. George, CMG. While the bodies of the remaining 3 victims of the November 9th plane crash were flown to New Providence today, the Parks family went down in that ill-fated jet at the rear of the Grand Bahama shipyard 2 Sundays ago while on their way here to Grand Bahama for the Global Leadership Summit. As Megan Shepard tells us, funeral plans are next on the agenda.
The mortal remains of the final 3 crash victims left for New Providence around 11 a.m. on Tuesday morning. The family of Lavard, Raydell, and Johannan Parks were prepared for their final flight by the Yeager Funeral Home. Funeral Director Jamal McSweeney says, although there was no immediate family on the island, the bodies were prepared to the expectations of family members in New Providence.
Concerning the Parks, the uncle of Lavard, he was given permission to act, and I spoke to his brother in Nassau, who sent documents into medical records giving that approvals for us to make the release today.
Now, McSweeney says the funeral services are expected to happen in the near future.
Next week, his funeral is scheduled for Friday, which is Saturday the 29th. His funeral is tentatively scheduled for.
McSweeney says they have had a long-standing relationship with the Bethels Brothers Funeral Home out of New Providence, and they have done their best to prepare the bodies considering the nature of their death. He adds that ultimately the family will decide how the funerals will be handled.
The stage that they are, the finishing part of it will be done at the funeral home in Nassau, and once they arrive there, they will basically speak with the directors at that firm, and then they will come about their decision as on viewing and so forth.
The bodies made their way to the Grand Bahama International Airport, where they were placed on a Flamingo Air aircraft. Their final flight into New Providence. Megan Shepard, ZNS Network News.
Now, the remains of the other victims, Dr. Miles and Ruth Ann Monroe, Pastor Richard Pinder, pilots Rakan Cooper and Stanley Thurston were transported to New Providence yesterday. The body of the U.S. citizen on board, Diego de Santiago, was cremated and ashes scattered in the sea. Stay with us, there's more news right after this.
Bringing news that matters to you. You're watching the Bahamas Tonight Northern Edition.
Welcome back. Another graduation ceremony held on Grand Bahama. This time it involves the nursing profession. Monday evening, 9 new nurses were welcomed into the fold of the Grand Bahama Health Services. Italia Hall was there.
The first nursing pinning ceremony was held in Grand Bahama on Monday evening. The pin signifies that graduates have been duly certified and are now safe to practice in the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. Minister of Grand Bahama, Dr. Michael Darvell, encouraged nurses to continue to add to the growth of the healthcare system.
We must all work harder to ensure that we provide better quality care for our patients and be mindful that everyone in your care, you must think of them as a loved one or a parent. Ladies and gentlemen, nurses are vital in delivery of efficient healthcare services in any country, and the Bahamas is no exception.
The graduation group includes 8 females and 1 male. The graduates became emotional as they reflected on the hard work they have put into this great achievement.
But we must remain focused and dedicated to the cause. To our families that have stood by us when we're too exhausted to socialize, take care of kids, spend quality time as family, because in our case, we left Grand Bahama to go to Nassau to complete our quest. We have been exhausted, stressed out, worried, upset. We have even cried and laughed for no reason. So we thank you for standing by our side as we followed our dreams of becoming a nurse.
With much practice under their hats, the final task was to obtain their nurses' pins from the Nursing Council. Program coordinators say that the program is growing as many Bahamians are becoming more involved in the healthcare profession. Italia Hall, 7S Network News.
Thank you, Italia. Well, that pinning ceremony held last night at the Pelican Bay Resort. In other news, students at the College of the Bahamas Northern Campus being recognized for their hard work and dedication to their studies. On Thursday, the college held a special ceremony on the school grounds to celebrate the achievements of the students. Faculty, staff, and students were joined by family members and other invited guests at the grand occasion. Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Aslyn Jones, traveled to Grand Bahama for the special event.
It's so important for us to celebrate the successes of our students because it motivates them to do better, and the other students who are not as focused as they are also motivated to do better the next time around. And the college is so proud of the academic achievements of all of our students, and we want to encourage all of them to do well. And so this ceremony is really a very special ceremony that we have once per year.
Now, Dr. Jones says a tertiary level education is vital, and she's encouraging all young people to focus on their education and pursue higher learning.
I'd like to appeal to all of the young high schoolers who are about to do their BGCXEs to really aspire to attend the College of the Bahamas, because we have some very, very important programs here that would help them become the leaders that we need them to be in our Bahamas today. And we really need some young people to come and become focused in taking this country to another level.
And finally, in news this evening, scores of high school seniors coming together on Sunday for an important assignment. Now, as Kimberly Mullings tells us, these youngsters are following the dream of a higher education.
26 national and international institutes, colleges, and universities were in attendance at the 29th Annual College Fair held at Bishop Michael Alden School. Students from various high schools who attended the college fair shared their experiences.
We don't really know where to start. We just go online and search stuff, but we don't really know where to begin. And this gives us a good head start. And we know what colleges offer and where we should look.
I like to be able to see what all the colleges offer, and it's personal relationship where I could ask questions instead of just being online applying.
I am here today because I feel that I could have got a lot of opportunity to look at different schools and what they require, and to learn how to further my education.
If I've experienced a great amount of exposure, it's better to be here in person with the colleges as opposed to being online because you can ask direct questions and where you can get immediate responses.
Chief Administrator at Tarif College, Samuel Bethel, says the certificate and degree programs offered locally are prime for young and mature students alike. Fancher College International Student Advisor Mary Lou Vanderhoven says it's always a pleasure to have Bahamian students at the institution.
Some of the advantages are, like I said, it's local, it's affordable, and it gives them that opportunity to be able to spend some time here before going off to a foreign institution.
I have been coming to the Bahamas now for about 12 years. I totally love coming to the Bahamas and meeting the students. This past semester we had 37 new students that started with us. We're very, very pleased with our Bahamian student population. They add such a wonderful dynamics to our international student population.
This year's college fair was organized by the Grand Bahama Principals and Vice Principals Association, sponsored by Statoil and the Grand Bahama Port Authority. Nassau's college fair will be held at Super Club's Breezes this Thursday and Friday. Kimberly Mullings, ZNS Network News.
Stay with us. Sabrina Brown has a check on sports when we come back.
And welcome to sports. I'm Sabrina Brown. A sport that has been a part of Grand Bahama sporting scene for many years is now being revitalized, and officials are starting with the youth. Joan Davis Roll reports.
It is one of those unusual sports, a sport that is gaining support here on Grand Bahama, squash. The new man at the helm of the Grand Bahama Squash Association is Tashawn Smith.
We started a youth clinic earlier in the year. We wanted to kind of follow up with it in the fall. What really launched it was a BBC video we saw from a player at Trinity College and her exposure to squash through an urban program in the U.S. That kind of sparked our interest with trying to make a connection with the coach there and try to do something similar on Grand Bahama.
He says he was inspired by one of this country's leading coaches to keep the sport of squash alive.
I started playing squash about 4 years ago. Took some lessons from Errol Bodie, who was the former president. And he really inspired me to kind of get involved with the board, involved with some initiatives that he had in place, ideas he shared with me, and that kind of gave me a passion to, especially after he passed, to see his legacy kind of pushed on. And since then, I've really kind of kicked into high gear when I became president to really kind of revitalize his legacy.
In town for the special squash clinic was head coach at Trinity College, Wendy Bartlett, and the #1 squash player in Bogota, Colombia, Catalina Pelaez.
It's growing. It's definitely growing, and it's growing across the U.S., across the world. Now, if squash gets into the Olympics, it's really going to be phenomenal. And there's no reason why it can't be growing here.
It's a great opportunity for the Bahamas to gather kids and for us to show them and hopefully inspire them and make them like the sport, because it's just a great opportunity, sports in general. It's a great opportunity to eventually go into a college.
Squash officials here on Grand Bahama say they're committed to promoting the sport, and they will offer it free of charge for youngsters interested here on Grand Bahama every Saturday. For ZNS Hold Sports, I'm Joan Davis Roll.
Thank you, Joan. The Grand Bahama Amateur Softball Association Co-Ed Softball Division Finals. Last night, the Pats Uniform Reds defeated the Kellys Pacesetters 13-5 to win the East Series 4-2, with Lyndon Richardson picking up the win, the loss to Keel Pinder. In the West Series, the Immigration Enforcers defeated the Cooper's Destroyers 13-9 to tie the series at 3 games, the win to Jamal Green and the loss to Robert Cooper. Game 7 is tonight at 7:30 at the Plex. And that's your check on sports.